So then you were in the office and we talked, and then we decided to just go for it. And I said, would you like to do hypnosis with me now? And you said, yeah. So we did that first session, and I have the notes right here, and you said, I want to attract healthy relationships and have a healthy relationship. And if a good person comes along, and if he's sweet, and if he will put my needs first, I just don't like him.
Oh God, no. I kind of look at that individual as weak. If I have to earn love, it's more valuable inherently. And I think it's because to a large extent I had to earn my parents' love. My parents did the best they could. It's not your fault, Mom. But it's, just learning and getting those stories in your head, how ingrained it gets.
Yeah. And so you said that it came down to, well, if it's somebody that's a bad boy, it's like, how can I win them over, and more interested in people, men like that, and sometimes personal relationships that were friends too. It was the same thing, I believe you were telling me.
Yeah, so I tend to attract a lot of narcissists. I think if you want to use a clinical term, but very selfish people that will just take. So I was a giver.
Those people don't show up in my chair, but all their victims do. I see them all, right? And anyway, okay, so then we also learned before we started that session, you told me, you had started Whole 30 the day before, and that you also hoped that this would help with some weight loss.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so then I said, okay, what do I do? Do I go, my thinking is, do I work on this relationship thing first and the emotional stuff? Do I start there, or do I start with the weight problem? And I decided to go ahead and start with the weight problem. And so when we got you into hypnosis, I took you down the low road of continuing to eat the way you had been eating before Whole 30, so you could kind of get an idea of how bad it could be. And then I took you up the high road of having been really successful with your diet and that kind of stuff. And then I said, your appetite is suppressed. And I said that several times, and I told you how to think about that so that the appetite suppressant would work, because you can literally give someone a hypnotic appetite suppressant when they're in a hypnotic state, and if they accept the suggestion, then it will have an effect on them. And I told you, I said, whenever I say your appetite is suppressed, what I want you to do is just get a feeling like your appetite is suppressed. But don't get a feeling like you're sick of food or you're sick, because some people will go to like a time when they were sick. And I said, don't do that. What happened?
Well, I'm a tester of many theories. So when someone tells me not to do something, because I'm kind of a rebel, which we also talked about being rebellious,
right.
and your diet can go hand in hand, which I thought was really enlightening.
Yeah.
But I did think of something that made me sick, because I was like, if this hypnosis thing really works, the skeptic in me, I want immediate, like, bad result. Like, if I do something she says not to do, because it will end up in this, I'll feel bad. I wanted to test it out. So I did think of a time I was sick. I thought of
So sick at your stomach. I said your appetite is suppressed, and she thought, oh yeah, that feeling when I'm sick at my stomach, right?
Yeah, when you eat so much and you just want to right? So, and I also envisioned all the foods that are like my guilty pleasure foods. So like burgers, fries, pizza, just to name a few. And when I left that day, I went and got lunch. It was very easy to make a healthy option before I went back to work. But I drove past like Shake Shack, and I remember going, ugh, I just felt sick to my stomach. And people had pizza at work, and it literally made me feel nauseous.
That's the only real harm in that, is that it can make you have a very bad week.
But it was okay, because I was like, okay, this stuff works, and now I can like fully commit to the work, because there's a homework in between. And I think when you take on this type of transformation, you have to really commit to it.
Okay, very good. That's an interesting story, and I'm glad you shared that with people. And then I also gave you the suggestion that you would have a sort of an emotional holiday and be more balanced. What happens there is, so people have a lot of subconscious negative emotion, and it will kind of come into consciousness when they have a bad emotion in the present moment, like a fresh negative feeling. The stuff in the past and the subconscious will resonate with it, and so they'll feel that feeling plus the stuff in the past. And so I asked the subconscious to keep the stuff in the past in the subconscious and give you a break, so that you would continue to have feelings, but they wouldn't be over the top, and you would have an emotional holiday for a week. You'd have a rather pleasant week. It didn't have to be over the top great, but just to give you a break. How did that work for you?
Oh, that was so great. I think that was worth their fee that time for that session. Because I'm a stress ball. Like, I walk around and everything typically really stresses me out. I felt very peaceful. I was very equal. I still am, I would say. And I think it's the daily practice that really contributes to that.
The 7th path self-hypnosis, you're doing that every day, and that's what you mean by the daily practice.
Yes. Sorry.
Okay.
But then we're also, it was just, I felt very free. I had a fight with a friend, and we went to dinner, and normally I'll be very passive aggressive. I like to think of myself as this strong woman that's not afraid of conflict, but I am. And finally she said, do you want to talk about this? And I said, I do. And then, I heard her side, and it was the first time in my life where I didn't resort to me being a victim, it being about, you hurt me. It was, I really heard where I messed up. And I'm like, I can fix that. And it was just very easy breezy.
Wow.
I'm in sales, so that's a very emotional job.
You can go up and down with the sales.
You're either like, the best thing ever or a piece of crap, depending on the day. And both can happen the same day based on deals. I lost an $80,000 upsell deal.
Sure.
And I had to accept some feedback about our product versus a competitor's product. And, I took the notes and I shared it with my leadership. And normally when you lose a deal like that, they want to place blame. And I said, well, the product's inferior, and here are all the reasons why. And I just sat there, I said, any questions? And here are all the things that I did to save the deal. You win some, you lose some. Any questions? It was very even.
Good.
About it, and that's financially impacting.
Right.
Like, nobody wanted that deal more than me.
Right.
But it made sense, and I wanted what was best for the customer, and that's really why we're salespeople, because we really want to help people. If you're a good salesperson,
right,
so,
that's true.
It really
is help them with their business or whatever you're doing, right?
Yeah, and I really felt like they made the right decision, so I let it go.
Wow, that was nice for you, wasn't it, to have that sort of balance there? Right, and so as far as sticking to Whole30, was it easier or about the same, or did you have any other impact from that session than what we've already talked about? Or
I haven't been perfect on the Whole30. Like, my diet, I still think there's stuff to work on with weight. I think food has been a comforter of mine for 32 years.
And this is why we don't do this in one session. She didn't get this way overnight. So we do stuff like the emotional holiday and the appetite suppressant, and having her look at what's going to happen if she keeps going this way, and what's going to happen if she goes up the high road. And then we let it all soak in, and life was her testing ground, and is the testing ground of the clients. And so that when you're testing it out, you get some feedback from me for the next time. And then from there, I know what to do next.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.